LOL take two. LOL take two. LOL take two. Now listen. Many years ago, I did a podcast episode extolling the extraordinary virtues of my olfactory expertise, aka my uncanny sense of smell. Like some kind of a street dog or backwards soothsayer, one whiff of zinc smelting and carbon production takes me right back to the shores of the Mississippi River in Keokuk, Iowa, circa 1970, near the El-Chem carbide plant, now an EPA National Monument to Hazardous Waste. All this without even going into a trance or speaking in tongues, which in my case would be reciting the lyrics of I Think I Love You by the Partridge Family. My eyes may need glasses, my ears may need assistance, and my hair, well, it's just not worth mentioning at this point. But that ability to catalog my journey and smells, however useless, still lives on in my being. The outside of my nose, however, suddenly became a different and kind of scary story. Let me go back. 4 months ago, I made the pilgrimage to my dermatologist for my quarterly strip and burn. This is where my fabulous and lovely dermatologist puts me in a ridiculous paper vest that was seemingly made for a toddler. It doesn't even close in front, and I look like Sonny or Cher in 1965 wearing a fur vest and singing I Got You, Babe. The paper vest is soon dispensed with, and she gives me the once-over. Just as God made me, all the while we compare notes about recent and upcoming vacations each of us has taken. She will inevitably find something of concern and tries to remedy the damage I did to my poor epidermis decades ago, from laying out at Lake of the Isles, slathered in baby oil, to buying punch cards to save money on multiple hours spent in tanning beds at strip malls during the depths of Midwest winters. I now pay the price quarterly, but I do get fantastic vacation tips in the process. On that particular visit, she pointed out some precancerous stuff on my nose and said she had to spray it with her bottle of liquid nitrogen, which I think she had permanently attached to her left arm. No problem. She sprays whatever she needs to. It flares up, gets red, scabs up, then falls off and goes away. I'm very used to the process now. On my way home, however, I panicked because I realized I was going to be back in the Midwest in a little over a week and had a paid podcast reading gig. Think positively, I say. Maybe my poor schnoz will have healed by then. I said nightly novenas to St. Bartholomew, the patron saint of skin conditions, but in my suitcase, I packed a little container of makeup base just in case St. Bart didn't pull through. Well, he didn't. This treatment looked worse and worse, and the day of my reading for 125 people, it looked like I'd been in a knife fight and lost. I tried covering it up with the makeup, but it made my nose look like it was expanding and turning condo. My friend Dean had come to see the reading and said, don't worry about it. It doesn't look that bad. It just looks like you got scratched by your cat. Oh, sure, if I kept a leopard or a puma as a pet. I went on, and the reading was a big hit with the sold-out audience, and nobody pointed at me and snickered, or if they did, I didn't notice. A month went by, and the damn thing wasn't healing like it always did. It just kept peeling and peeling nonstop, as if I had been to Daytona Beach on spring break, only I hadn't. A week before Christmas, I was back to the doctor for my holiday strip and burn. They gave me the paper vest, and I didn't even put it on this time. What was the point? She'd seen it all a few months before, and it hadn't gotten any better. Minutes later, my favorite doctor walks in, and she says she has some medical students with her today. Before I can grab the paper vest out of the trash can, 5 very serious-looking interns come in, and all appear to be about 15 years old. Now, her exam rooms are not large at all. The 7 of us crammed into that room, me in the middle and my Calvin Kleins, was like a circus clown car with the clowns wearing lab coats and carrying clipboards. I was a little uncomfortable, so I was trying to add some humor to the proceedings, every joke landing with a thud on this group. This was a tough crowd. I point out to the doc that my nose just doesn't seem to be getting better, and she says, I need to do a more intense treatment this time. Don't freak out, but it's a chemotherapy cream that goes on 2 times a day for 2 weeks. It's not going to be pretty. So if you want to wait until after Christmas, you can, but you need to treat this. Merry Christmas, she says, and the clown car moves on to the next circus. I decide that since it's going to be a quiet Christmas with limited social bookings, I will dive in and do the chemo cream and just get it over with. Bill and Brody will have to deal with it. Of course, this stuff is basically poison in a tube. The brand name used to be Effudex, but now it comes in a barely cheaper generic called Fluorouracil. That drug name just makes me giggle. It sounds like some Gilbert and Sullivan operetta. She had her big breakthrough playing Lady Patsy at Covent Garden in Fluorouracil. Or even better, just spritz a little Fluorouracil on your privates to mask nasty odors. It works like a charm. Already, on day number 2 of the chemo cream, my skin is rejecting me. Apparently, the cream can work its way from where you've applied it, in my case, my nose, and spread all over on its own, burning everything in its path like lava from Mount Kilauea. I look as if some Cub Scouts have been practicing wood burning on my poor face. I Google it and find some nice dermatologist in South Carolina giving all kinds of tips for using this cream. Namely, you apply Vaseline to anywhere you don't want the cream to spread, and it will keep it contained. Since that's basically my whole face, except for my poor nose, I now begin a pre- and post-shower routine that would make Joan Crawford jealous. And worst of all, we have a social engagement, our friend Moore's surprise birthday party. This is several days into the treatment, and my nose has turned the brightest shade of red. In fact, I could step into any Christmas pageant playing Rudolph and save the show. The rest of my poor face is covered in a light film of Vaseline. We arrive at the surprise party and are greeting everybody, and when I hug the women, their hair is sticking to my face, and I feel like I have to explain what's going on. The host's husband says, "Oh yeah, my dermatologist had me use that stuff on my face last year, and after my entire face peeled off, it's never been the same." Oh, great. Another guest tells me his dermatologist gave him the same cream to use over Christmas, but he held off starting it until after the surprise party. At the end of the evening, I had strands of everybody's hair stuck to the Vaseline on my face. I was a 6'1" walking cat tree covered in half the guests' DNA. Luckily, the next week and a half was days and days of rain in Los Angeles, and I rarely had to leave the house over the Christmas holiday. I was content to sit and stare at the Christmas tree, Brody sleeping on my lap, and praying that my sense of smell, which seemed to be curtailed during this treatment, probably psychosomatic, and my pre-apocalyptic skin would somehow return on the other side of this. I remember the 1960 movie Ben-Hur starring Charlton Heston, in which his mother, Miriam, and little sister Tirzah had come down with leprosy. They never explained where they picked it up, but the ladies spent most of their scenes covering their horrible, scarred and peeling faces in this ghastly leopard colony, with Ben-Hur sneaking into the colony and bringing them takeout. I felt like Miriam and Tirzah every time the Amazon driver would deliver boxes in the pouring rain. I kept my poor face in the shadows as I thanked the postman for working on Christmas Eve in the most rain Los Angeles has had since 1985. Our skin, in most places on our body, has layers of fat under it. In some places, many, many layers of fat. But the nose is a thin layer of basically tissue paper over the cartilage. And this cream made it burn like hell, all the while itching intensely at the same time. It was a plethora of discomfort, but I had to leave it alone. I had a countdown on my calendar until the last day I would have to apply it, which turned out to be New Year's Eve 2025. I even heard from the guy at the party who had started his regime the day after the party. He sent me pictures of his poor forehead, burned to a crisp like he'd applied moisturizer with a blowtorch. At long last, it was New Year's Day, 2026, and I was done with it all. I still had to be careful while my poor face recovered, and the post-shower routine was still almost as long as an episode of The Golden Girls. My nose segued from Rudolph to Freddy Krueger, the tissue paper skin fried to a crisp and starting to hang like a half-finished decoupage project. Oh my God, when would this end, and would it ever be better? A week later, Finally, the nastiness had shedded away. There was still peeling, which is what had brought me to her in the first place, but the whole face started healing and getting its normal rosy color back. It's kind of ironic that I was shedding my skin, as it were, while starting a new year and getting rid of the ghosts of the previous year. There were some great things that happened last year, but a lot of scary stuff going on in the world, which sometimes I couldn't help but internalize. Time to let it all go. Later in the movie Ben-Hur, Miriam and Tirzah make it out of the leper colony and are at the feet of the crucified Jesus and the two thieves, all on their respective crosses. An enormous tempest of rain, thunder, and lightning flashes on the scene. The ladies look up at the three crosses and they pull back their bandages. It's a miracle. They have been cured. Not by a tube of $385 fluorouracil, but apparently by Jesus. Suddenly, these two women are very glamorous, very Hollywood starlets, beautiful, in fact. They have lipstick on, and I guess Jesus did their hair, too. I have heeded the advice of said dermatologist, and now when I go out for my walks, I no longer wear my Tony Awards baseball-style cap. I swapped it out for a much bigger, floppier Norman Thayer hat like Henry Fonda wore on Golden Pond. Best of all, my uncanny sense of smell has returned, and applying the now required SPF 50 lotion brings me right back to spring break, Daytona Beach, 1983. And finally, my nose has stopped peeling, a fresh layer of skin covering it, while the rest of my face breathes a sigh of relief at not having to endure daily Vaseline treatments. It is a new year. I have a new nose, perhaps that of my 20-year-old self. Too bad the rest of the face looks like Sophia Petrillo.
LOL take two. LOL take two. LOL take two. Ba 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 bum.